Assalamualaikum dear students, welcome to your channel The Anatomy Canvas, and in today's class of the Neuroanatomy we are going to discuss the bones. So the learning objective for the today's class are to describe the external feature of the bones, the internal structure of the bones and different levels, to describe different cranial nuclei which are present in the bones as well as in the brainstem, and the different nuclear group of the reticular formation which are present in the bones as well as in the brainstem. So first of all, the pons, the external feature, it resides in the posterior cranial fossa. It is roughly 2.5 centimeter. It rests against the clavius of the skull below the tentorium cerebri. So here you can see this is the tentorium cerebri, and it rests against the clavius below the tentorium cerebri. And developmentally, embryologically, it is formed from the metencephalon. So pons can be studied in two ways, that it is its dorsal portion and the ventral portion. The ventral portion or the large ventral or anterior portion which is called pons proper, and the dorsal portion also called the tegmentum which is present in all mammalian species. Ventral portion or pons proper is well developed in the human beings and in the mammalian, but tegmentum is present in all the mammalian. So pons can be divided in another way as caudodorsally into the three major segments. So first is the caudal pons, then is the mid bone, and then is the rostral bone. So from caudal bone at the pontomedullary junction, you can see there is emergence of the roots of the facial nerve, the abducent nerve, the facial nerve, and the glossopharyngeal nerve. At the midpoint, in the mid region, you can see there is emergence of the trigeminal nerve. Both its roots are present, the larger sensory root and the smaller motor root. And at the junction of the pons with the midbrain, you can see there is the emergence of the cochlear nerve root over here. So anterior surface is rostral to the medulla. You can see this is the medulla, this red area is the bone, and here is the midbrain. So this is rostral to the medulla, and this is caudal to the midbrain, and this is the most anterior and the cranial part of the hindbrain as well. So as transverse sulcus, this is the present over here which separates the pons from the medulla. This is the pontomedullary junction. Also in the center there is a sulcus which is called basilar sulcus or basilar groove, and in the basilar groove you can see the basilar artery is present. This basilar groove lodges the basilar artery. So this is convex from side to side and from above downward and transversely striated because of the fibers of the corticopontocerebellar pathway. On lateral side, you can see it is attached to the cerebellum via middle cerebellar peduncle. So ventral surface of pons is separated from the clavius by the basis sphenoid, the dorsum sella, and this by the cisterna pontis. It has shallow median sulcus bounded bilaterally by the prominence. So these are the prominence. Just in the middle, just near the middle point, you can see the emergence of the both the motor and the sensory roots of the facial nerve. So this is the dorsal portion. This is also called the tegmentum of the pons, and this tegmentum is well developed. It is present in all mammalian species. It is forming the upper part of the rhomboid fossa or the lateral ventricle, and in this you can see this is bounded above by the superior medullary velum. On each side you can see the middle cerebellar peduncles are present to which it is attached, and in the lower part or inferiorly it is separated from upper part of the pons. Here you can see the stria medullaris. These are transversely placed fibers which are present over here, and this is the line where the pons is separated from the medulla posteriorly. In the center you can see a sulcus over here, and this is called the median sulcus, and on each side of the median sulcus you can see medial eminence, and the facial colliculus is also present. So this is a detailed view of the rhomboid fossa, in which you can clearly see the pons, the posterior aspect or the tegmentum of the pons. So in the center you can see the sulcus. This sulcus is dorsal median sulcus. On each side of the dorsal median sulcus you can see the prominence. This prominence is called the medial eminence, and on each side, laterally on each side of the medial eminence, another sulcus is present, and this sulcus is called the sulcus limitans. Here is the name, sulcus limitans, which is present on lateral side of the medial eminence. At the upper part of the sulcus limitans there is a depression which is called superior fovea, and at lower part of the sulcus limitans there is another depression which is called the inferior. Here it is called the inferior fovea. This sulcus limitans curves medially, and it joins the anterior dorsal median sulcus. So in upper part of the median sulcus, upper part of the eminence, there is a swelling at the level of the superior colliculus, and this swelling is called facial colliculus. This swelling is produced because of the fibers of the facial nerve which winds around the nucleus of the abducent nerve. So this is the level of the superior fovea, and this is the facial colliculus. Just above the superior fovea there is a region which is bluish in color, and this region is called the locus ceruleus, and this region contains highly pigmented neurons which release epinephrine. On each side you can see this is the vestibular area, and then the cochlear area which is present, and laterally this surface is related to the pons by means of the middle cerebellar peduncle. So you can see these three peduncle, the superior peduncle, the middle cerebellar, and the inferior. Another point you can notice that in the lower part of the pons the cavity is wide, while in upper part of the pons the cavity is narrow. So while we will be discussing the internal structure, we can see that when we will discuss the lower part, the internal structure of the lower part, we will see the cavity will be open. But when we will discussing the upper part, we can see the triangular shaped cavity will be present in the upper part of the bone. So this will be the narrowed cavity, and we can also see the superior medullary velum over there. Also this is the part of the medulla which is forming the lower part of the rhomboid fossa, and in this you can say this is the hypoglycal triangle which is present, this is the vagal triangle which is present. Here you can see inferior fovea which is present, and also here you can see the opex which is present. So these all are the different structures, the external features of the tegmentum of the pons which is forming the upper part of the rhomboid fossa. Now we will discuss the internal structure of the pons, and pons internal structure can be divided into two parts, the ventral part and the dorsal part. So here is a structure which is called trapezoid bodies. These are the transversely placed fibers. The part of the pon which is just anterior to the trapezoid body is called the ventral part or the basilar part of the pon. Throughout the pon, this part has almost the same features. So we will discuss the basilar part throughout at all the levels of the pons. These basilar part will be having the same features. So what are the different features? So in this basilar part we can see two things. One are the fibers, the nuclei, and other is the nuclei. So the fibers which are present over here are the descending fibers and the transverse fiber. The descending fibers are those of the corticospinal fibers which descend over here, which are spread because of the nuclei which are present in this area, and then when entering into the pyramid of the medulla, they again become compact to form the pyramids. Then the corticonuclear fiber which will be present over here, this corticonuclear fiber will rely on the contralateral cranial cranial nerve nuclei in the brainstem. Then the corticopontine fibers, which will rely on the pontine nucleus, which will be present over here, and then they crosses to the opposite side, and then they ascends. So crossing fibers are forming the transverse fiber. So these are the different structure. The transverse fibers which are present, these are the crossed fibers of the corticopontocerebellar pathway. The corticopontine fibers, when relay upon the pontine nucleus, crosses to the opposite side, form crossed fibers, enter through middle cerebellar peduncle into the cerebellum, forming the corticopontocerebellar pathway. Alongside these fibers, also the pontine nuclei are present as well. So this is the basilar part of the pons. Now we will discuss the tegmentum of the pons. So pons tegmentum can be discussed at two levels. First is the level at the motor and the sensory nuclei of the trigeminal nerve, and second level is at the level of the lower part of the pons at the level of the facial colliculus. So we will discuss the level of the pons at structure of the pons at two levels. So this is the tegmentum of the pons. It is the rostral continuation of the medullary reticular formation, the cranial nerve nuclei 5, 6, 7 and 8, that is trigeminal, abducent, facial and glossopharyngeal nerve nuclei will be present. Ascending tracts in part of the brain stems are almost similar to those found in the medulla, except for the medial lemniscus. So we will discuss this chapter. First, have a look at the basilar part. Here you can see the transversely placed fibers which are present over here, the dispersed fibers of corticopontonuclear fibers and corticospinal fibers as well. Then this so we will discuss first this thing. This one is the nucleus of the facial nerve, and alongside you can see the superior salivatory nucleus. So facial nerve fibers arises over here, they goes back and they turns around the nucleus. So this red nucleus is the nucleus of the abducent nerve. So these fibers goes back and turn around the abducent nerve nuclei, and then it goes downward between the nucleus of the spinal nucleus and tract of trigeminal nerve and its own nucleus. It descends downwards and then it emerges as a facial nerve. So this is the facial, this one is the level, the cross section at the level of the facial nerve. Also you can see this one is the nucleus of the abducent nerves, which exits from the anterior aspect as well. So these are the cranial nerve nuclei which are present over here alongside, and then you can see this lemniscus which is present. This is the medial lemniscus, and the change you can notice over here that instead of being longitudinally present, this is horizontally placed in such a way that the fibers features coming from the nucleus cuneatus are present more medially, and the fiber which are present from the nucleus chrysalis are present more laterally. So fibers in the medial lemniscus are somatotopically arranged. Next to the medial lemniscus, you can see over here, this is the spinal lemniscus, and you also know that the spinal lemniscus is formed from the tract of the anterolateral system, anterolateral spinothalamic tract. Also they join the spinotectal tract. These tracts combine to form the spinal lemniscus. So here at this level you can see the two lemnisci which are present, the medial lemniscus and the spinal lemniscus. Then in the midline structure you can see in the center the longitudinally placed medial longitudinal fasciculus is present. Then anterior to medial longitudinal fasciculus are bundled. You can see the tectospinal tract and then the rubrospinal tract, which is also present over here. Then moving on to the lateral aspects, you can see these are the vestibular nuclei which are present over here, the two nuclear group of the vestibular nuclear complex, and then the dorsal and the ventral cochlear nuclei, and in between these two nuclei you can see the inferior cerebellar peduncle. So dorsal is present posterior to the inferior cerebellar peduncle, and ventral cochlear nucleus is present anterior to the anterolateral to the inferior cerebellar peduncle, and in between the inferior and middle cerebellar peduncle. So these are the different features, internal structure of the pons at the level of the facial colliculi. I will again revise. In the basilar part, the transversely placed fibers are present, that of the corticopontocerebellar pathway, the corticospinal pathway, corticonuclear pathway, and the nuclei which are present over here are the nuclei pontis. Then another very important is the trapezoid body. The trapezoid body are basically the fibers which relay in the cochlear nuclei. These are the fibers of the 8th cranial nerve, the cochlear nerve. Then in the crosses over here in the trapezoid bodies, and then they ascends as the lateral lemniscus. So at this level you can see the crossing, and at the level of the trigeminal nerve you will see the well developed lateral lemniscus will also be present over there. So this one is the trapezoid body. Here you can see medial lemniscus and the spinal lemniscus, the facial nerve nucleus and the superior salivatory nucleus which is present, facial nerve fibers turning around the nucleus of the abducent nerve, and then come to lie between its own nucleus and that of the nucleus of the spinal tract of trigeminal nerve, spinal nucleus and tracts of the trigeminal nerve. Then it exits the bones, its anterior part. Also you can see this one is the dorsal and the ventral cochlear nucleus. In between is the inferior cerebellar peduncle, and here you can see the vestibular nuclei. This area is the area where you can see facial colliculus is present, and also you can notice the open cavity which is present. This is the open cavity of the fourth ventricle. This is the lower part. Here the cavity is broad and is open. So in this area you can see the facial colliculus. So these are the features of the tegmentum of the pons. Medial lemniscus, as I have told you, it assumes more horizontal position, and it is present just dorsal to the ventral part of the pons. So this is the ventral part of the pons and present just dorsal to this, and also the trapezoid body which is present. Then the medial longitudinal fasciculus, I have told you, the corticonuclear fibers after relying on the different cranial nerve nuclei, they form the medial longitudinal fasciculus. Then the spinothalamic tract and the anterior spinocerebellar tract, they are present at their position, the spinal nucleus and tract of trigeminal nerve, and the vestibular nuclei which are present. The very important are the pons, the reticular formation in the tegmentum of the pons which are present, the different nuclear group which are pars oralis, pars caudalis, pars pericellularis, sometimes called pars parvocellularis as well, and central tegmental tract, different nuclear group of the pons, reticular formation which is present in the pons and also in the brainstem. Here in this level, this is the transfer section at the level of the pons, a very beautiful section to show the fibers of the facial nerve. So this is the nucleus of the facial nerve, and the fibers arising from here and turning around the nuclei of the abducent nerve and then exiting from the anterior aspect. And these green are the nuclei and the fibers of the abducent nerve. This is the ventral part of the pons, and this one is the pyramid of the pons. Here you can see the dorsal descending cortical fiber tracts which are present, and this area in the median plane is the facial medial longitudinal fasciculus, and this swelling is, this prominence is because of the nucleus of abducent nerve and bend of the facial nerve. This is called the facial colliculus. Also important point over here is that the nucleus of the nucleus of the facial nerve is embryologically it is not present over here. It is present rather medially and posteriorly, and during development it moves anteriorly and to the lateral aspect. So this movement of the nerve nuclei to some level is called the neurobiotexis. So this facial nerve nucleus assumes its final position where it is present over here. Then this is another beautiful section of the transfer section at the level of the facial colliculus. Here you can say this is the genu of the facial nerve and the abducent nerve nuclei present over here. This is the area where you can see medial longitudinal bundle, then the tectospinal and the rubrospinal tract will be present. In this area you can see the transversely placed medial lemniscus, and lateral to medial lemniscus you will see the spinal lemniscus which will be present over there. This area is the trapezoid body, and here this is the ventral part of the pons in which you can see descending fibers and the pontine nuclei as well. This larger is the middle cerebellar peduncle which is present over here, and above will be the superior cerebellar peduncle. So this is a beautiful diagrammatic presentation of the pons at the level of the trigeminal nerve. This is the second section of the internal structure of the pons, which is at the level of the trigeminal nerve. So again we will first see the basilar part, the same structure you can see over here. These are the fiber tracts, the descending fibers. These are the fibers of the corticospinal tract, the corticonuclear tract, and corticopontocerebellar pathway, forming the horizontal fibers going to the cerebellum through middle cerebellar peduncle, and also the nuclei which will be present over here are the pontine nucleus. Then is the trapezoid body, and the trapezoid body is formed by the fibers of the cochlear nerve nuclei. They sometimes relay, most of the fibers relay in ventral cochlear nuclei, some relay in dorsal, and then they crosses to the opposite side forming the trapezoid body. Some fibers even do not relay on the dorsal and the ventral cochlear nuclei, but they cross in the trapezoid body and then they relay in the nuclei of the opposite side. So this trapezoid body are basically the fibers of the cochlear nerve nuclei which are crossing over here. Then you can see the fourth structure. This one is as usual. This is the medial lemniscus part of the dorsal cartilage medial lemniscus system. Next, you can see here a well-developed trigeminal lemniscus is present. This trigeminal lemniscus carrying the fibers of the pain, touch, temperature, also the fiber sensation of the proprioception from the area of the head and neck region. Then you can see the spinal lemniscus which is related to the anterolateral system of the ascending tracts and also contain the spinotectal tract as well. And here you can see the fourth lemniscus which is now well developed over here. This is the lateral lemniscus. So at this level you can see the four lemnisci which are present from medial to lateral direction. This one is the medial lemniscus, then is the trigeminal lemniscus, then is the spinal lemniscus, and then you can see the lateral lemniscus. So these four lemnisci. Then we move on to the central structure. Here you can see the medial longitudinal fasciculus which is present, then the tectospinal tract and the rubrospinal tract. Another point you can see, this is the area where you can see superior medullary velum, and this is the cavity of the fourth ventricle. Again you can see, you can notice the change in the cross section at the level of the facial colliculus. You will be looking an open cavity and a broad cavity. At the level of the superior level you can see this cavity is enclosed in internal structure and it is triangular in shape, and it is the cavity of the fourth ventricle. Superiorly it is bounded by superior medullary velum. Then over here, the structure which we are describing for a long time, this is the trigeminal nerve. So the two nuclei of the trigeminal nerve, this is the motor nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, and this is the main sensory nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. And also here you can see the mesencephalic root of the trigeminal nerve, and these three roots combine to form the trigeminal nerve. This one is the middle cerebellar peduncle, and here is the section of the superior cerebellar peduncle as well. The ventral or anterior spinocerebellar tract will be present over here as such as in the lower section, and then it will enter through the superior cerebellar peduncle into the cerebellum. So these are the features of the pons at the level of the trigeminal nerve nuclei. This is another beautiful section of the internal structures of pons at the level of the trigeminal nerve nuclei. So this is the basilar part. Here you can see the descending fibers and the nuclei pontis. Here you can see the transverse fibers, the transverse pontine fibers. Then is the trapezoid body, and then you can see the medial longitudinal fasciculus. So this is the medial lemniscus and trapezoid body. This one is the trapezoid body, and here you can see the medial lemnisci which are present over here. This is the nucleus of the trapezoid body. The trapezoid nucleus is called. Here you can see the lateral lemniscus, and in between medial and lateral lemniscus there will be trigeminal lemniscus and the spinal lemniscus. This is the central tegmental tract, the part of the reticular formation. Here you can see here is the this is the medial longitudinal fasciculus in the median plane. Then you will see the fibers of the tectospinal and rubrospinal tract. This is the cavity of the fourth ventricle. This larger is the middle cerebellar peduncle, and here you can see the superior cerebellar peduncle, and this area is superior medullary velum. So now we will be looking into the internal structure in a sagittal section, and we will see the different nuclei which are present in the pons as well as in the brain stem. So you can see, starting from here, this is the midbrain, and you can see the two nuclear group which are present in the midbrain. These are the nuclei. This one is the nucleus of the motor, and the Edinger-Westphal nucleus of the oculomotor nerve, and this one is the nucleus of the trochlear nerve. The trochlear nerve is the only nerve which emerges on posterior aspect. All remaining cranial nerves emerges on the anterior aspect. So the two nerve emerge from the midbrain. This is the trochlear, and this one is the oculomotor and the trochlear nerve. Then is the pons. Here in the pons, first look at this nuclei which is present in blue color. It has three parts. This part is called the mesencephalic nucleus of trigeminal nerve. This part is called the principal the pontine nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, and this large nucleus is called the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. So trigeminal sensory nucleus has three parts: the mesencephalic part, the principal part, and the spinal part of the trigeminal nucleus. And this one is in pink color is the motor nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. Then here you can see this is the abducent nerve nucleus, and this is the facial nerve nucleus, and facial nerve fibers turning around the abducent nerve nucleus posteriorly present, forming an prominence called the facial colliculus, and then they emerges from the anterior aspect. Then again in the level of the medulla oblongata, you can see first this is in yellow color is the dorsal nucleus of the vagus nerve, and in pink color you can see this is the hypoglossal nucleus. Next to this hypoglossal, this smaller nuclear group is the solitary nucleus or nucleus of the solitary tract, and then in yellow color you can see the salivatory nuclei which are present. These salivatory nuclei are two in number, the superior one and the inferior one. They are present closer to each other. Then you can see this blue, as I have told you previously, that this is the spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve, and interior to this spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve you can see this is the nucleus ambiguous which is present over here. Then is the this is the spinal nucleus of the accessory nerve and its nerve roots, and here you can see the inferior olivary nuclei. So these are the different cranial nerve nuclei which are present in the midbrain, in the pons, and in the medulla. This is the diagram for the reticular formation of the bones and the brainstem. So reticular formation are actually the dispersed nuclear group which were present in the at the level of the spinal cord. You can see in the gray matter different nuclei were present, and these nuclei are dispersed because of the descending and ascending fibers in the brainstem, and they form the reticular formation over here. So reticular formation can be studied into three groups. The one is the median group, the second is the medial group, and third one is the lateral group. So in the median group you can see throughout the brainstem, this is the nucleus which is present. This is called the nucleus raphe. Then in the medial group, at the level of the medulla oblongata, you can see the nucleus gigantocellularis is present. Then at the level of the pons, you can see this is the nucleus reticularis tegmentum, or also called the central tegmental tract, and this is the nucleus reticularis pontis caudalis, or nucleus caudalis of the reticular formation. And here you can also see the nucleus reticularis oralis, pontis oralis. So these are the different nuclear reticular group, and at the level of the midbrain you can say these are the nucleus cuneiformis and nucleus subcuneiformis. So this medial group is present. It starts from upper part of medulla till the level of the midbrain, and the median group is present in the form of the nucleus raphe throughout the brainstem. Then we are moving on to the lateral group, and here you can see the pedunculopontine, the lateral and the medial parabrachial nuclei which are present, which are part of the reticular formation. This larger one is the cranial nucleus, and then the central nucleus of the medulla oblongata. So another diagram showing you the different groups. In the center you can see the median group, also called the nucleus raphe. In purple color you can see the medial group. This is the gigantocellular group of the present in the medulla oblongata, the central tegmental tract, and nucleus caudalis and nucleus oralis of the reticular formation present in the bones. And this one is the group of the present which in at the level of the nucleus cuneiformis, which is present in the midbrain, and this one is the lateral group, the medial and the lateral parabrachial group which are present over here. So these are the different nuclei which are present in the brainstem and which are part of the reticular formation. Again, a beautiful diagram showing you the different nuclear groups of the cranial nuclei which are present. Again, starting from the brainstem, you can see this one is the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. It is parasympathetic nucleus of trochlear nerve, and this one is the motor nucleus, and this one is the oculomotor nerve. Edinger-Westphal nucleus and motor nucleus of oculomotor nerve, and here you can see the trochlear nerve nucleus. These two nerves emerges from the midbrain. Then at the level of the pons you can see the nucleus of this one is the in red color you can see the motor nucleus, and in blue color you can see the sensory nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. So you can also see this is the mesencephalic part, this is the principal part, and this is the spinal part of the trigeminal nerve nucleus. Then you can see the facial nerve nucleus and its fibers which are turning around the nucleus of the abducent nerve. Now this area is the vestibular nuclear complex, and then the cochlear nuclear complex. So this is the area where the vestibular and cochlear nuclear group will be present. Then most posteriorly here you can see dorsal vagal nucleus is present, and then the motor nucleus of the 12th cranial nerve, that is the hypoglossal nucleus. Then anterior to hypoglossal, this blue color nucleus is that of the solitary tract or tractus solitarius which is present. Then this one is, as I have told you, nucleus of the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. Then you can see this one is the nucleus ambiguous which is present over here, and this is the spinal nucleus of the accessory nerve, and here you can see the inferior olivary nuclear complex, and these two small nuclei, the superior and inferior salivatory nucleus. So these are the different cranial nerve nuclei which are present over here. Also you can differentiate another thing, that the motor nuclei are the which are carrying the somatic motor fibers, are given the red color. The trochlear nerve nuclei, the oculomotor, the trochlear, the motor nucleus of the trigeminal, the abducent, and the facial nerve nucleus, its motor part, and also the hypoglossal nucleus. And sensory nuclei are given the blue color, and the fibers which are carrying the special visceral fibers are giving a different color, which is little bit a maroonish or purplish in nature. So these are the different colors as well. These are showing you the mixed fibers. So red are the efferent or motor fibers, blue are efferent fiber, and mixed fibers are present like this nuclei, which is showing you the mixed fibers. Another a beautiful diagram over here. You can see the different cranial nerve nuclei in this section as well. So this is the Edinger-Westphal and motor nucleus of the oculomotor nerve, the trochlear nerve nucleus. Here you can see this is the trigeminal nerve nucleus. Its mesencephalic part, its pontine or principal part, and its spinal part. Also you can say this is the trigeminal motor nucleus, the facial motor nerve nucleus, and the abducent nerve nucleus, which is present over here. And here the two small nuclei, which are superior and inferior salivatory nucleus. In the center you can see, in the mid plane, you can see this is the nucleus of the hypoglossal nerve, and most posterior one is the dorsal motor nucleus. Then you can see the nucleus ambiguous as well, and the accessory nucleus of the spinal nucleus of accessory nerve. So this one is the spinal trigeminal nucleus and its tract. Over here, these green color are the vestibular nuclear complexes and cochlear nuclear complexes, and also this is the nucleus of the solitary tract or the tractus solitarius. Again you can notice in the blue color you can see the somatic motor fiber. These somatic motor fiber are present in the midline, the oculomotor, the trochlear, the abducent, and the hypoglossal, the purely motor fibers. Then you can see brachial arch motor fibers carrying the fibers which are special visceral efferent fibers. So these are the fibers which are supplying the brachial arches, the first and the second. So this one is these are the brachial arch fibers going to the through the trigeminal motor nerve, and also the dorsal motor nucleus of the vagus nerve, which is also supplying visceral efferent fibers to the brachial arches. Then visceral motor fibers are also present. Then you can see the general sensory fiber. So general sensory fibers are present over here given the color. Then the green color are the visceral sensory, and these are the special sensory fibers. So these are the different fibers which are given the different colors over here. Another slide, almost the same slide, but you can see the difference. This is the vestibular nuclear complex, and different nuclei of the vestibular complex are the superior, the lateral, medial, and inferior nucleus. And here you can see the dorsal cochlear nucleus, which is also present over here. So at this level, the nuclei which are present below these are present in the upper part of the medulla, and the superior and the lateral nuclei are, and the part of the medial may be present in the upper part of the pons. So here you can see the third, the fourth, the sixth cranial nerve nucleus, which is present over here. This is the trigeminal motor and sensory nucleus, and this one is the trigeminal facial, and this one is the nucleus ambiguous. This one is the mesencephalic, the principal and the spinal part of trigeminal nerve. This is the nucleus of the tractus solitarius over here. So, and again superior and inferior salivatory nucleus, and then the dorsal motor nucleus of the vagus, which is present, and then the hypoglossal. So different colors are given. The efferent cranial nerve nuclei are given these three colors, and the efferent fibers of the cranial nerve nuclei are given these colors. Another diagram to show the different cranial nerve nuclei and also the different in sections of the pons. So you can see oculomotor, trochlear nerve, the motor nucleus of cranial nerve 5, 6, 7, superior and inferior salivatory nucleus ambiguous, dorsal nucleus of vagus nerve. This is the nucleus of the structus solitarius, and this one is the main sensory nucleus, the mesencephalic, and the spinal part of the trigeminal nerve nucleus. And in purple color you can see the vestibular nuclear complex, and here you can see the cochlear nuclear complex. So the level which is taken at the level of the facial colliculus, here at this level, so you can see this is the section, the facial nerve nucleus. Here you can see this is the facial nerve nucleus. Here you can also appreciate it. You can also see the abducent nerve nucleus, and here you can also see the abducent nerve and abducent nerve nucleus and facial nerve fibers rounding around it. Then again you can see this is the descending spinal tract and its nucleus. Here you can see this is the nucleus. Then in blue color you can see hypoglossal. So this will be present in the medulla. Here you can see this is the paramedian punta in a reticular formation. This one is the trapezoid body. This is the ventral part. And in this area you can see the motor nucleus and the sensory nucleus of trigeminal nerve and the medial longitudinal fasciculus. This one is the medial lemniscus. This is the trapezoid body, and this is the basilar or the ventral part of the pons. So here I complete my today's lengthy class, and the references for the today's class is Carpenter Humans Neuroanatomy, the 9th edition, the Gray's Anatomy by Susan Stranding, 40th edition. I hope you can understand well the structure of the pons, and keep subscribing and also comment your comment section. Allah Hafiz till the next class, and thank you very much for your attention.